Well. It's Wednesday, baby. You already know what's in the brew. You already know because it's all over your TV screen. It's all over the socials today. Once again, children went to school and were blown the fuck away. Just another day. Just another thoughts and prayers kind of day in the US of A. Even Daddy Dumpy Pants came out to say, pray with me today. But for all of you out there that voted for that fool that you seem to think he cares about the children everywhere, I need to tell you it has nothing to do with the kids. He even lowered the flag at the White House today to half mast, but it was about his ass. That's right. He doesn't care about those kids. Nope. As a matter of fact, the Red Hats are already on their shit in the Twitter streets today because the shooter. Photos have been released of the shooter. He's got long hair. He changed his name from Robert to Robin. So they're claiming he's transgender, and that's why he's insane. But there's something else going on here that I need you to understand, dear. They have photos from his YouTube channel of his ammunition, where he had scratched and scribbled on his weapons, dear, and his ammunition cases. And one of his ammunition cases said to unalive Daddy Dumpy Pants. I can't say the words here on the social. The video won't go nowhere, but is what one of his ammunition things said. And that's all they care about, the Red Hats. They don't care that children were unalive today, dear. They care more about what was scribbled on that ammunition because it was about the orange whore. He lowered that flag today to half mast because somebody threatened his ass. Two birds, one stone here. It appears like he cares, dear. And at the same time, he can pat his own ego. I'm sure it won't be long before he comes out to say something in the way of transgenders and plots to unalive him. That's what they're going to turn this whole thing into. With absolutely no proof that this boy was transgender in any kind of way other than the fact that he changed his name. But that's what they're going to say because they're already saying it today. They got thoughts and prayers for you, though. The faux Christians that they are. They tell you thoughts and prayers. Because they believe to pray means to drop to your knees and ask for peace and prosperity on any given day. They don't understand words and what they're derived from and what they mean. To pray means to praise. When you drop to your knees to pray, it is to praise God or whoever your all-powerful being is, dear. It's not to ask for peace. You're praying to a God who flooded the earth because he was unhappy. And you think praying to him is going to bring you peace for your children today? I mean, the children were at Mass. They were praying. I don't mean to be crude here, dear, but clearly, prayer does not work. But the Republicans, honey, y'all still go out there and vote, even though they can't draft up legislation for real gun control and reform in the US of A. They just can't seem to find a way. No. They can make sure that anybody can walk into any gun store at the age of 18 across the United States without any background checks or holds and buy a gun. They can do that for you. But they can't pass any legislation that would say when you go to purchase a gun, you must wait. You must go through extensive background checks. And then you can have it. Now, I'm a gun owner. I don't mind having to wait a week or two before I get my pew-pew. If that means that somebody who is not mentally stable doesn't get a pew-pew to go unalive children, I'm okay with waiting 2 weeks. I'm okay with waiting 3 weeks. I'm okay with waiting 6 months if I have to make sure that mentally ill people and criminals don't have access to pew-pews. But Republicans can't do that for you. They can't pass legislation to make sure that your kids get a good education. They can't make sure they pass legislation to make sure teachers are paid for providing said education. But they can pass legislation to ask teachers to arm themselves. They can't pass legislation to protect your children in this nation from predators. No, they elect them and they put them up there. And then what they seem to be able to do is pass legislation to lower the age of consent so that they can do whatever they want to with your 12 and 13 and 14-year-old daughters. They can do that. They can hide those files all day long, but they can't release them until they redact their Orange God's name out of them. They can call for the military to be on the ground in D.C. because apparently there are roving gangs of teenagers about. Because a 19-year-old boy who calls himself Big Balls had his big balls wrapped around his goddamn throat, so they can make sure that the military is walking around there in a city that has had crime on the decline for quite some time. But they can't make sure your schools are safe. They can pass legislation to put the 10 Commandments in schools, and they can pass legislation to make sure there's not a litter box station in schools, but for some reason, they can't seem to pass any legislation to make sure your kids can eat in school. They can pass legislation to take your child's ability to choose which books to read while they're at school away, but they can't seem to pass legislation to make sure that an 18-year-old in high school doesn't go out and buy a fucking pew-pew and then bring it into the school and blow away children. But they can pass legislation so that same 18-year-old can't have a phone at school. Republican my ass. It's Republicans around here all day, every day. They can't seem to tax the 1% at a fair rate, dear, but they can seem to pad their portfolios with stock options and buy-ins for detention centers and police officers and the Gestapo to break up families. They can manage to go into schools and hem up 9-year-old children because they're brown. But they can't seem to make sure you have a choice on what to do with your body. They can pass legislation to make sure a grown-ass man can take your innocence from you at the age of 13 and get away with it, dear. But they can't seem to pass legislation to make sure that you have a choice what to do with your body after he's done that to you. They seem to be able to do anything they want to when it comes to the orange fool. They can do anything for him. They can even violate our Constitution. But they can't do anything for you. They can't provide you with legislation to make sure that people don't come into your state and erect supercomputers that absolutely destroy your water and your air and your soil, dear. They can't do that. We gotta let them get away with what they want to do. They can't seem to come up with the money to end the homeless crisis in America. But boy, in 8 days, they managed to come up with $450 million to put up a fancy fucking tent concentration camp. They did that. But when it came time to use that money that was given to them by a Democrat to make sure that they had sirens up to let people know that a flood was on the way, they couldn't spend that money that way. But they were able, they can absolutely take that money that was supposed to be appropriated for safety in Kerrville, and they can buy themselves new boats and homes. They can do that. Ted Cruz can't seem to do shit for the people he represents, but he can hop on a plane expeditiously and leave the minute he hears the weather's about to get bad in Texas, baby. Creepy Peepy can't provide work opportunities for people who live in his district, but he can hop on a plane to go pick out a heifer to usher in the apocalypse, friend. He can do that. Keep voting for those who do nothing for you and use your children as fucking toys and cannon fodder, boo, and see where the fuck that gets you. Thoughts and prayers. That's what it gets you, baby.